And so for whoever it is, for young folk I engage with who may not be in the system yet, who are just sitting up there randomly looking in classes and trying to figure out what their purpose is, trying to figure out some type of existential meaning in a chaotic and absurd world, I say, wait a minute, what are your hot water experiences? That's restorative practices. What brought you to the point that we're in this circle today? But recognize that at the end of this circle, at the end of that practice, at the end of that term, at the end of 10 minutes, your job is not to sit up in the hot water and wallow away. Your job is to open the door and be of service to somebody. But the only way we can expect individuals whose structures bigger than some of us have pushed aside to be of service to anybody is for us, like what you do daily, is to engage our lives in the restoration of hope and the restoration of values and the realization that these mirrors, Little Wayne say, mirror on the wall, here we are again. Through my rise and fall, you would be my only friend. Tell me that you can understand the man I am. So why are we here fighting with each other again? That type of understanding that mirror moments are those relationships. Mirror moments are times that we, and what we do, but what we do in people, we have to make themselves accountable. And so you need to look at that mirror. And we can't let even President Obama, we can't let him or our darling First Lady Michelle, we can't let them get away of trying to make America look good in a broken mirror. You want to look at my cell phones? And you want to have your NSA director stand up and say, but look, in this process, we found 12 terrorists. I even look good in a broken mirror. You want to off-the-rod drones? You don't want to close Guantanamo Bay because in part you are afraid of what you might look like? I might look weak, but yet you question the very hood boys or hood girls who themselves say, I must operate with a vision of imperialism because I get it from my mama. So I ask you, I know you're fired up, ready to go. We all are fired up, ready to go, but I ask you, as we bring this to a little bit of close, I ask you to think about Shakespeare's Hamlet. I was like, damn, how the hell he get from Lil Wayne and Dero and Young Jeezy and Rapper George, Hip Hop George? Somebody got to email me who the hell Hip Hop George is. But he might be the hotness from Toledo. But in the fourth act of Shakespeare's Hamlet, Hamlet was called by King Claudius and was trying to figure out what was going on. Trying to wonder, where is Polonius? Where's he at? Shakespeare told him, he said, you know what? He's dining right now. He's had supper. He's eating? I've been calling for him. What you mean he's eating? I'm the king, don't you know? Well, he's not quite eating himself. He is the one being eaten. So Claudius is saying, And so the line you see on your board right there is, that is exactly what Hamlet told the king. He says, look, man, the reality is that, look, if a man may fish with the worm that have eat of a king, that has eaten of the fish that have eaten the worm. And a man may fish, again, I'm going to teach you now real quickly. A man may fish with the worm that have eat of the king, and eat at the fish that hath fed the worm. Now that came about 3 or 4 pages before this conversation at the cemetery. I like to talk about death a lot, not because I'm druid and dark, but because I realize that that is a level of certainty that I must recognize awaits me very soon. And that level of a certainty is to ask myself what it is that I'm supposed to do before that moment comes. Now, we all know, no man knows, no woman knows the day of the hour. So the question I always tell people, look, if you can quote that you don't know the day or the hour, but yet you recognize that you're not ready to die, then what are you saying? I don't understand, Doc. I said, well, look at what Hamlet is saying. So we work backwards. That there are some kings in this world who will live and who will die. And there are some paupers in the world that all they do is fish. And they will live and they will die. And so in Act 4 of Shakespeare's Hamlet, they're at the cemetery talking to the grave digger. Because they're trying to figure out why it is or what goes on in this cemetery. And Hamlet is having a conversation with the grave digger, and like, whose grave is this and whose grave is that? And the grave digger was kind of funny sometimes. Well, it's my grave because I'm digging it. I said, well, whose skull is this? Well, it could be the skull of Julius Caesar, because his skull is here somewhere. It could be the skull of Alexander the Great, because his skull is in there too. Or it could be the skull of your late servant to the king. Bottom line, we all in the same grave. And so when people ask me, Dr. Bailey, you went to Howard, you went to Harvard, you got all these degrees. How do you hang out in the hood? How do you have these conversations? Why do you? I'll say, well, look, what does that mean at the end of the day? Because I recognize that my job is to feed folk. And the question is, we all are feeders. We all give of others. We all give to others. But the question is, what is it that we give to others? We all got food to give. Some of the food is nourishing, and some of the food is devouring. But the reality is that we are all a part of a human system. So Hamlet says, look, the king can treat the pauper like garbage. And when the king dies, the worms take part of the king's experience. Eats the king up, and then somebody then grabs a little fat squibbly thing and put it on a hook and throws that worm that had just ate the king into the waters and catches a fish who eats the worm who ate the king. And we just ate the fish who ate the worm, who ate the king. This may sound like a 4th grade nursery rhyme, but Because there was an old lady who swallowed a fly. No, I'm sorry. I don't know why. Not perhaps she gonna die. But the question becomes is, if I know that everything I put out in the world is going to actually come back to me, why aren't I putting out good fruit? So all across America right now, my great institution of Wittenberg University, thank you for bringing me along with my family and my friends, and my Twitter folk, my hip-hop heads. I got to give a shout out. My folk would be mad if I didn't give shouts out. I do have a book that came out in 2011 called Essays on Hip Hop's Philosopher King on Jay-Z. That is out, but that's old stuff. You can get it if you don't have it. That's old stuff, especially nowadays that he's making news everywhere. Got press conferences going to Cuba, stuff like that kind of thing. But we're working on two projects now. They'll be out in February. One is the essays on Kanye West, a phenomenal conversation that we're engaged in the type of questions that really push this question of what it means to be a public image and what that public image represents when it comes to truth. And I'm not one to tell you, and I'm here to tell you, everybody who listens to rap music or watch break dances or listen to DJs, I'm here to tell you, look, some of that stuff is image, but the image tells a story, and there's nothing more different than I don't know what truth is. Again, I'm an existentialist philosophically, so I'm still unknown what truth is. I grew up as a Christian, so the only truth I know is Jesus, and so everything after that I'm not sure about. So if in fact we are clear, and yes, Jesus is not the same as Jesus. Again, if you're under 40 and ain't got the album on Tuesday, that's the name of Kanye West's new album. And so I was in a big beef the other day with two pastors who want to automatically demonize Kanye West and says, he's a demon, how dare he blaspheme the name of God. And I said, look, I don't know what song you're listening to, but that's not what comes out of that song. So the second line of the song is, I am a God, I'm a child of God. I'm under the hand of God. And you're going to demonize it? It's the same thing you tell your parishioners every week. I am God. I am a child of God. We sing at the altars, restore me, renew me, make me whole, make me new. Well, then why are we questioning when we elevate ourselves? Because we are new. So I have that book coming out, then I have another, at the same time, we got another project coming out on ruminations of hip hop as philosophical form that's coming out in January also. So I have two projects coming out in January, but I set out to say is that yes, I'm a philosopher though, and trained in theology, listen to music of all kinds. You all know you can take away I'm a Kelly Rowland fan. She is my wife. And what exists in my mind is better than what exists in reality. Unless you're manti-teo, then it becomes problematic to people that they don't understand vision. Y'all sitting up there acting like y'all ain't never dreamed about having that man, that woman that completes you, that makes you whole. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying y'all gonna act like y'all ain't never dreamed about her. Confidence says keep it real. Because some of us have dreamed about a perfect society, has dreamed about a place that allows for justice to take care of its citizens and democratic voice to represent the best of who we are. But for some of us, that dream hasn't come into fruition, but you're working on it, you're working toward it. And so as I close this conversation, I want some of us to remember that I grew up a grandson of a Baptist minister, through Catholic schools all my life, two Catholic high schools, and after both of them threw me out, ended up going to a great high school, Thornwood High School in Chicago, and outside of Chicago. But I was always fascinated by the biblical story of Lazarus. Something about the Lazarus story that always caught my attention. Now, those of you who don't know the story, I'm going to say it in 3 minutes, get on out the door so we can ask questions and y'all can move on and we can hit the hip-hop panel later on. But I'm going to say this in my own way because I'm not an ordained minister. But Mary called on the cell phone Jesus. She didn't know that Obama and the injustice system was listening in. She called Jesus and she said, Jesus, not Jesus. She said, Jesus, your beloved is sick and needs your attention. Jesus, he says, I'll be there. But just like most of us who our kid is sick, our child is sick, our loved one is sick, we want help to be there right then and there. But Jesus ain't have no Learjet at the time. He wasn't a baller like Jay-Z. Jesus got there when he could. And when he got down the road, because he rode with all his boys, Jesus had a posse. They rode. There were some theological goons, you know what I'm saying? They weren't wanksters, they were spiritual gangsters, you know what I'm saying? They were true to this, they were new to this, you know what I'm saying? So they rode with Jesus over the rivers and through the woods, past grandma's house and everybody else. They arrived on the road where Lazarus and the family and Mary and them were. Mary come running down, all hysterical. Jesus, Jesus, you're too late. He's died. I can imagine if Jesus was anything like me, because my name do start with a J and end with S. If he was anything like me, Jesus said, look, I didn't walk all these miles, all these days. Can I get some Kool-Aid first before all this? I mean, can a brother get some water? I mean, you come in with all this, talking all this raspy stuff, trying to ask me stuff, what I'm saying? Hip-hop reference, excuse me. Jesus like, wait a minute. It's cool, I got this. He ain't asleep, he just resting. Mary's like, what the heck? I'm telling you, man, I've been here. I watched the man die. The man is asleep. And Jesus walked up to rise Lazarus and told him, rise, open your eyes, and live. And there's two things I want to leave you with, and if you can go back to the other one, is one is recognize that your impact should outlast your importance. And for some of us, again, I'm not speaking to you directly, we just had this conversation, right? But many administrators flip that proverbial script. And they believe their importance supersedes their impact. And I'm just here to leave you with the idea of keeping your head that your impact shall outlast your importance. Why? Because again, Jesus wasn't there, and Mary and everybody else was waiting for Jesus to show up because they believed the only way this boy could have life was if Jesus showed up. So everybody put all their hopes on Jesus. And some of you got administrators who you're fighting with, and school boards who you're fighting with, and justice systems that you're fighting with, and they are operating like the king, and they got mass of importance, but little impact. And so the reason I believe this is important, you go back to the next slide. The reason I believe this is important is because the reality is when Jesus comes through, raises Lazarus, if you will, from the dead, he realized that what you're dealing with is not me, it's the impact of me. If I had sent my homie to do the same thing, y'all would have been all right with that too. You called on me, But yet the bottom line is that you wanted restoration. We're calling on mayors. We're calling on governors. We're calling on presidents. We're calling on senators. But what we really want might exist with me. We realize that people's importance does not supersede their impact, but the reverse is the case. So I'm a firm believer, like Jesus, at that day, he interrupted death. He interrupted death. And for many of us who do the work that we do, there are some dying and some spiritual and mental dying people in cities and states across this nation. And some of our leaders are calling on God to bless the flag and God to bless the United States of America. But you know, I hate to be selfish, but God, can you bless me another day so I can bless somebody else? God, can you just give me the push so that I can do my job? Because at the end of the day, when I die, I want somebody to cry at my funeral. I may not have a state funeral with the bugles bugling and the flags waving. I may not have that because my importance may not be that big, but I want to have folk at my casket crying. There lies Julius, whose impact was greater than his importance. There lies Sister Gina. There lies Sister Sharon. There lies all the volunteers of this great conference. There lies all of you, whose impact was greater than your importance. Because, Brother Morris, you'll appreciate this. The song asked the question, when will there be a harvest for the world? And I'm a firm believer that harvests occur through work. And those of us in this room have done the work, but I don't know what it is that we need, but we have to focus in on being interrupters. We need the same thing that Jesus did with Lazarus. We need to interrupt. We need to know that when school systems are closing, we need to be interrupters of death. When organizations aren't hiring, we need to be interrupters of death. When psychic violence have taken over the minds and hearts of people, we need to be the interrupters of death. When heteronormativity is affecting the realities of men and women, we need to be the interrupters of death. When sexism and homophobia is affecting our communities, we need to be the interrupters of death, because there's sadness in this world, there's helplessness in this world, and we need to be in harvest for this world. And so I appreciate the invitation that I was given to be a part of this great body of people who across this nation, all of you, have more impact than importance. And I just encourage you to stand strong in that impact. Recognize that is what carries truth. That is what has residual effect, because we all want a better world, and we know that some of us are dealing with messed up individuals and messed up situations, and messed up men with messed up women create messed up children, and these messed up children be going to these schools and these churches and creating messed up schools and messed up churches, and these messed up churches and schools who find themselves as beacons of light to a community find themselves inhabited by messed up children who was parented by messed up parents who didn't understand, who didn't go to the restoration process. You think that you got over the fact that you was molested as a child. You think you a man, I heard a sister say the other day, you think you're a man because some woman gave you fellatio at the age of 8. You've been affected. And his false sense of masculine bravado infects the way in which I operate with my sisters, let alone with how I raise my young brothers. So women become objects instead of subjects. And I can beat and slap and hurt and murk and not feel the impact that it has, but we circle them up. Our job is to circle them up because we who seek a better world have decided that in our mirror moments that we want to be better people. And better people make better decisions, and better decisions create better progenies, and better progenies inhabit better communities, and better communities create better states with better countries. So when will there be a harvest for the world? Or when all of us recognize and look in the mirror, recognize what beauty our true seed is, and sow that seed of fruit in lives of others. I thank you for your time.
We're going to probably let him go, and I'm going to tell him to come to your session.